Hello and welcome to the Inner Sense channel. Today we are joined by Dr. Valentina Onisor, a medical doctor and yoga teacher and consciousness explorer who does an incredible job at bridging science and spirituality. This follows on from a conversation with her colleague Dr. Amit Goswami, which was on this channel last year, so please look at that to find out about his views on quantum consciousness and experience. And please remember to subscribe to the Inner Sense channel for more information about how to improve your well-being through becoming sensitive to subtle body sensations. Dr. Valentina, welcome.
Hi, Dr. I'm happy to be with you.
We've been arranging this talk for quite some time, so I'm really delighted it's happening now, and you're in Romania, your homeland at the moment.
Yes.
So maybe we could start with hearing about your journey. What drew you from towards combining conventional medicine with spirituality and consciousness studies?
Yeah, it was obviously, it was very powerful reincarnation qualities that attracted me towards integration and towards going very passionately on both fields. But also the fact that I grew up in a family of priests and doctors. And both of them, they were very strong on their belief systems and very passionate about everything they were doing, So I got to be there, like before I was 6, kind of I knew that I want to go in this direction. It was very interesting. As actually my first memories were very strong related to life of a priest, I have to say, which was probably the past lives. It was so strong. And then when I realized, okay, now I'm a woman, now what am I to do? Because I cannot really be the priest that I should have been or something. And then I kind of said, okay, so it has to be health with spirituality, and they go in the same direction, that there's nothing different there. So it was already, there were some seeds that I guess I worked before, But then also the family helped. And then also the challenges that came in my life helped also. And then since I was 18, I had the chance to start studying yoga and meditation. Actually 17. There were some colleagues in my school who were doing long-term fasting, just water fasting. And then, those final exams when you're 18 and you finish high school. So I was doing so much of this water fasting, and I had such a bomb states of energy and happiness. And then I started to practice some yoga poses and meditation. It was everything so easily. So I was just doing a little bit of practice, and the results that I was receiving in school already, they were, I was already going so much on intuition, in that time. And then also in the medical study time. So all this continued to unfold and so on, until I met Professor Goswami, I think almost 10 years ago. And then things made, it was really a quantum leap of integration of all my searches and all the travels that I was doing in order to study and practice everything together,
I hope to sort of delve into a few of those punctuation points throughout your life as we continue to talk. Could we go back to the what you said about when you were 6 years old and the past life memories of being a priest? So, and you indicated that maybe in the previous incarnation you were a male priest. Is that right?
It was a very strong feeling, which was with me since I was very, very early age, like 3, 4, 5 years of age, And in the same time, so I was very attentive to everything, and what are the values? Like, what is the world that we live in? I was very attentive to values. What's with this life? I was putting very difficult questions to my parents, My father, he was so fascinated of me because even already I had so much vital energy awakened in the hands. And he was, what are you? Like until late, because I was living with my parents, both of them, and both of them, they were doctors, And when I was putting my hand on them, they were like, what's happening here? My God, and they were experiencing a lot of things without understanding. And my father, his mind was more open to this field. My mother was still like, uh-oh, what's happening here? But my father was so curious, and still still, I mean, he eventually, when he was in his 80s, they conceived me and my brother when they were already after 40s, you know. So when he was in his 80s and he passed away about that time, he also had a few years of cancer, you know. And then in that period, I managed to speak with him from another perspective, and he opened so beautifully, you know. So even I could mention to him, even if he has this mind very rationally alert and as a medical doctor, but eventually I was just so happy that I could transmit to him the knowledge from the Bardo Todol, and to just tell him to be attentive when the white bright light in that moment of passing will come. And it was such a strong moment that he was able to you know, immediately in an instant he had this very deep intuition about this light, and he made some connections with Christianity because we grew up in Christian tradition. So this was fantastic because he was until that time a very, very strongly declared rational materialist doctor, you know. But by the end of his life, he managed to open up, you know. Until then, we had the fights eventually, you know, about all these things, which for him were like, oh, what are you doing, you know?
So what he is during his illness and death experience that he was able to connect to the light and receive something. Did what? How did he explain that? How did he describe it?
How it was, because I was kind of, how will I tell him? And eventually I found a moment, you know, because in the time already I was traveling a lot. I was not so much in Romania, but still I was on, and I managed, I was with him and we treated that cancer, you know. So he was free from cancer, just eventually the body.
Wow.
Yeah. So he I mean, naturally, you know, naturally we went into the root of the problem and so on. So I managed
Mm.
to do this with him, which was amazing. But then still I felt that that moment was approaching, and I said, oh my God, how will I tell him about this white bright light? How will I tell him in very simple words? And then I was very inspired. And the moment I told him, he went already in such a deep state of consciousness, and then he came back like in 5 minutes with such a strong presence that it amazed me, you know. And he said, oh wow, you know, so this is what they talk about in Christianity. He started to give me some examples from Christianity, and I was just so happy that I did my work. I just told him about this white bright light, you know. And then not late after that, you know, after these days, he passed. And then yeah, so also, you know, I took care of there's this process how to support a person when he's dying. But I'm so happy that with him I managed to have him pass through this in a very conscious way. So this is beautiful, you know.
I remember first reading the Tibetan book of living and dying when I was in my teens and being amazed at some of the accounts of different ways of dying and people witnessing what people go through when they're dying. So it's not, you know, we often hear about the near-death experiences, but there's other types of experiences where people don't come back, but there's incredible things that happen as they die. So really, really fascinating stuff. So your parents were medical doctors, but other family members were priests. Were there any that were both, or were you the first one to be able to combine kind of spiritual?
They were not. They were either priests or doctors, or there were other things. But still, there were a few which were very influential. You know, my father's brother, he was a priest. So both my father and him, they were the first male figures that impressed me. You know, and then there were others also in the family. And then I was very glad to meet certain figures and even spiritual teachers that influenced me and inspired me. And then I had my main processes, you know, related to even levels of forgiveness. Even I had experiences some diseases, you know, so I had to learn the hard way because, you know, there are so many ways to learn. And many times we just, because we are so stubborn and, you know, we learn the hard way. Not then many learn the easy way, you know. And then I understood so many things. And then again, since quantum physics came in my life, everything was so much more easy and more beautiful. And for example, I didn't even know that we have the negative emotional brain circuits built into the brain. So even this, when you get it, that hello, you have this inbuilt there, And that's why you're so much in resonance so easily. If you're looking at the TVs or news which are negative, you're impacted. Or when somebody's talking negative about something, that's why you're impacted. And it's your job to create the positive ones, It's your responsibility, because we don't have them in the brain. We just have a little bit of those. So when you learn about the, the human nature, the base level condition, and you really just, you understand and you go through your process, things are easier.
But that negativity bias, I think I heard one of the interviews with you and Amit talking about the evolution of humans, and maybe that survival instinct, the negativity may have been helpful at one point when there were so many threats before we kind of settled and domesticated and so on, and had much more constant threats. Maybe it was a useful adaptation at that time to always be hyper aware of threats. But now it sounds like you're sort of suggesting that we can, through being aware of the bias we then have the choice to think differently or have a different positive outlook or a more hopeful, optimistic outlook.
So we wrote together 8 books. Now the 8 is going to be published these days, in this week, I think. But one of them is called Hero's Journey Quantum Style. Yeah. And maybe you read about Joseph Campbell's books, for example. Hero with a Thousand
Hero's Journey.
Thing, So we discuss in that book that these aspects, and about transformation. I noticed, and other people notices also, that eventually, there's a purposive evolutionary movement of consciousness that has to be clear. Even if sometimes we feel like we are just rolling down and rolling, we have to hold up to something. But there is a very clearly purposive movement, evolutionary movement of consciousness, and either we change, like how people transform. So what we notice, that people transform when we are facing tragedies, the death of a dear one, or we have an accident, or we have a very, major illness or something. That's one type. Or other time you transform when you go, let's say, to a temple in India or a sacred place, and you get such a strong intuition. You can heal, you can get the quantum leap of inspiration. That also can be. And the third type, which is the most wanted, is when we want to transform. We want to consciously transform. And we say yes to transformation because I love very much the Christianity, but also I love very much the Hindu tradition and the other ones. But in the Hindu tradition, there's even a cosmic aspect. It's called Kali, the cosmic power of time and transformation. And it's all of these are cosmic aspects, representations of divine attributes that have various names in various traditions. But the idea is that every process eventually, so we transform. Otherwise, there wouldn't be day and night, or, your beard would keep growing and growing and growing. So eventually, so there's a cycle that has to.
Transformation. So it's reminding me of.
If we don't say yes to transformation, then Kali comes, and it can be difficult. Many times when we get stuck in something, or when we feel that the earth is shaking under our feet, this kind of experiences, no? And that whatever you're holding on, usually we get too much attached to various processes, to various positions. And sometimes, again, the evolution is just saying, okay, that's enough now. There's another thing. And you keep holding on that, or a negative relation, or a relation that just is dead maybe, or something. And Kali comes with this message, okay, now shake off. There's another level waiting. And then either you say yes to transformation and it's going to be nice, or you say no and you cling to that. And it can be so painful, and it can be so much disease coming through, If you just don't want to transform. It's like in nature, whatever doesn't transform dies. So it's continuous transformation.
That's fascinating, and so many thoughts are popping in my mind now, especially around the new understanding of neuroplasticity in neuroscience and biology. And what I'm really curious about is the mobility between impulsive and reflexive behaviors that some of them which we develop during our lifetime, but some of them we're born with, which we call instinct or instinctive behaviors, and the ability to learn and to change and adapt. So you're sort of, if I understand you correctly, from the Hindu tradition, we have Kali, which represents what comes in if we get stuck and we don't shift these impulsive learned behaviors, we don't open up and allow to something new, some new pattern to emerge. Because we have, what's Ganesh is from the Hindu tradition as well, is it? Ganesha, the just overcoming obstacles. It's another one. So do Ganesh and Kali have a relationship?
You can say, but it's more. It's more to that. Like when you start. I mean, if you have you have to kind of learn about. I mean, I was very much passionate about all these traditions since I was since I was a baby, really, and I started with Christianity. And even I was like, whenever I had these vacations, holidays in the school, since very early age, I was going so much into monasteries, And even, it's interesting when I started medicine, I paused it for half a year because it was this so strong call, But even when I was going into this in monasteries and prayer, and I could feel that my heart was awakening, all these other vital energies, because you started with the subtle, the power of the subtle, everything was awakening, and so powerful, and I could feel the expansion of the aura and the impact on others, and so on. And eventually, I felt very clearly that you don't have to leave the world in order to transform. I don't know, only very few people kind of, if you really did your homework, if you really embodied your archetype, if you really did the best that you can for yourself and for the people in these times, you will feel that, okay, that's enough. But usually people are running out, they are just hiding into, I noticed because I had to say that I lived for many months into monasteries. And also I lived in ashrams in the same time. And I saw the same challenges there. So unless we realize about these negative emotions, so it's again, there is a brain memory, yeah, that we make consciously, we call it software that you can control. And then the memory in the amygdala cannot be controlled by us. Yeah. So it's again in the religious worldview, you hear about the negative emotions such as anger, violence, competitiveness, domination, fear, lust, jealousy, and so on, as evil as opposed to the good. And now in brain science, as you mentioned, it was done a bit better because the brain scientists identified these places in the brain's interior middle, which is called the limbic brain. They identified these negative emotion brain circuits as the source of our negative emotions, So all these negative emotions that create the mental stress and eventually lead to chronic disease, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune disease, it's so many nowadays, And only, if you contemplate a bit, then you realize that your emotions is a combination of thoughts and feelings, So neuroscientists still don't know what feelings are and how the brain's negative emotion brain circuits came about and how they work. So they cannot help very much in abating them or balancing them or transcending them, So they can talk about emotional intelligence all they like. There are so many books, but it's just talk, It doesn't help us transform our emotional response, like you mentioned in the past, so there was this suitable stimuli, like a cobra ready to strike, we see it by our primitive eyes and relay by the brain area called thalamus directly to the amygdala, where it elicits the instinctual, as you said, memory of emotions, which calls for a fast motor action, flight or fight. So there is I don't have the picture now to show you, but the pathway bypasses the neocortex. Yeah. And only later, the visual cortex, its eyes and apparatus of consciousness, come into play. And then we experience a negative emotion. So that's the best that neuroscience can do, So there is, I don't know the author, but the book is called The Emotional Brain. if we can, anybody wants to look for. So again, that's the essential problem with the negative emotion. And then whereas the brain memory we make consciously, as I said, is the software that we can control, but the memory in the amygdala cannot be controlled by us, so that's the distinction, because the memory that we control, it's easy to override, but the memory that we don't control is not, so the conventional wisdom that says that you cannot control or get rid of your instinctual negative emotions is true. And these negative emotions are still part of our nature. Then of course there is also discussion about the pleasure and addiction. The pleasure centers in the brain, which is not bad by itself, only when you all these explanations about this you find in the book that we wrote. Is called The Quantum Brain. So it's a very good book, I have to say. It's amazing, which describes what's happening also with the pleasure and addiction, and in traumas what happens. And again, the thing is that you cannot unlearn the negative. There's evidence that even if you get reconditioned against a particular negative to deal with, there will be a residue that will be triggered when the going gets tough, But the good news is that although making positive emotion brain circuits with quantum creativity may not compellingly work, they work partially, at least to help us balance our negativity so that we can manage, and then there is one way to avoid negativity that always works, is to start living increasingly in the quantum self, so and then the question, how to make this positive emotional brain circuits, how to optimize the brain to operate more in this quantum self modality,
so can I ask about the quantum self? So the word quantum is used in lots of different contexts. So when you use the word quantum for the type of work that you do, what are you referring to?
So usually the word quantum refers to a very, very tiny particle, yeah? But you can refer to the potentiality of something. But now what I mentioned refers to the base level human condition, So it's the fact that we have a quantum self and also an ego. So also it's an I and me polarity. So you can call it quantum self, the divine spark, or, Atman in the Hindu tradition, quantum self. So
it's the potentiality, the self as a potentiality, whereas the ego is a kind of more limited identity. It's more constrained.
Yeah. So the me is the ego, the me, the contraction, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The divine spark, everybody says that there is a divine spark in us, yeah. So again, it's, if you see nowadays all this worldview, culture, they are pulling us more towards this me or ego pole, yeah. So we become transactional. Consciousness gets constricted so easily, now it's a lot of survival related, a lot of what is in it for me only. So the moment we expand and learn to include another person, that's when we start awakening our heart also. My favorite subject about the heart. Yeah.
Oh yes, I want to ask you about the spiritual heart in a moment, but just to go back to this idea of contraction and expansion. So
that I don't get my thought. So about this contraction, what's happening is that we have this epidemic of information processing and less and less of meaning processing, so it's a kind of a bleed of the information industry. We know that, everybody knows that, right? So and then we have these negative emotional brain circuits built into the brain, and part of them are instinctual and are unconsciously triggered, followed by immediate survival related action and later negative emotions, So, but then also these pleasure circuits giving us dopamine, endorphin, and others, leading to addiction. And then again, it's kind of, this too shall pass. It's true of all the emotions, negative and positive. But the negative one takes so much longer to pass, So we know the design, but then we have to get to the positive emotions, because, and ask, where do they originate really? And how to build them. Like, for example, again, my favorite way and so efficient is about working with forgiveness, by the way. Forgiveness can give you so much. So if kind of like, if life gives you lemon, make a lemonade, kind of,
I like the Ho'oponopono practice. I don't know if you know that. I love you, I forgive you, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Sorry, I thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive you. Me, I love you. I've said it the wrong way around, but you know what I mean. That practice of forgiveness and internalizing it to ourselves, but offering it out at the same time.
Yeah, I know. But when you do it, you don't have to just say it. Some people are just saying it, you know? So it's not just, you have to say it when you really mean it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know? Because
So
it can
for
be
you, what's the relationship between meaning and feeling? So subtle energy and feeling.
So it's again, you cannot say sorry and so on, you know, because it's a social etiquette many times. It's politically correct. So if you do it only like that, because it's politically correct, you know, the way we live has ruined some of this. And many people don't say, uh, you know, so say thank you, just not because everybody else is doing it. So it's the idea is to do it because you feel it. You know, if your emotions are not in it, better don't do it because it only causes distress and maybe it's adding another mask, you know. So kind of we need to learn to be relaxed about it in a way, you know. And we have to understand our condition even when we learn about forgiveness, because eventually when you work with forgiveness, so first of course there will be some contractions, some traumas. Yes, you work with those, you know, you put the seeds, you play. It's not going to happen just like that if it's something major. But then you have to also work with the forgiveness because there's so much inertia in our life that we engage. There's so many moments that we miss, you know. We have so many opportunities that we don't engage. So eventually every day, you know, it's when we work with forgiveness, this will change into daily part of a habit kind of practice, you know. Because nowadays, if you look at the women condition, especially women, we are kicking ourselves so much, you know. We are not loving ourselves, we are not respecting ourselves so much because the way we are born as women, we have many times weak navel chakra. So if we talk about chakras, it's so many things that we can talk about. But yeah.
What do you mean by weak navel chakra?
Uh,
What is weak about it at the moment with women?
well, that's the first thing. I mean, we discussed again about the dichotomies, the male-female dichotomies. And actually, if you like the heart, the idea of the heart, so in order to awaken our hearts, this dichotomy, the male-female dichotomy, whether it's outer dichotomy, but also an inner dichotomy, you know, it becomes an inner dichotomy if you, for example, as a woman, you hate all men because you got hurt, you know, you didn't process, you didn't integrate whatever happened there, and then you start generalizing that all men are like that and like that, you know. But actually you're closing yourself towards your inner man as well, you know. You're maybe becoming a feminist, when which is not the feminine way, actually, to become a feminist in that way, you know. Or for a man, the same thing, you know. So if a woman hurted you or a few women, and then you close up towards the feminine aspect, yeah. So there's male-female dichotomy. We are made in a different way. There are differences how the brain is made for a man, how it's made for a woman. You know how even the hemispheres, you know, and the way you know, so how we process information, yeah. But also in terms of chakras, you know, so we have inborn qualities and inborn blockages, let's say. So think of how we grow up. Everything starts there, you know, how we grow up. How is our childhood? If our mother is a healthy mother and we can experience those first moments of love in a healthy way, that gives us a chance to create this circuit of love, you know. But nowadays, so many mothers are just busy, you know, they don't have time to take care of the kids so much. And then maybe you miss this chance of developing the self-love so easily. But then still later on, you know, the girls, they are very much encouraged to give to others, you know. So for women, it's love the other person, so not so much love yourself, you know. For men, they are growing more narcissistic, you know, so they are growing with, usually, you know, usually a man will even breathe abdominally easier than a woman. If you, I noticed that I put a hand on so many women's belly, and the bellies are contracted. You know, there are so many women with fibromas, with cysts, because the energy just doesn't circulate, you know.
When you
So, and also there's, of course, a lot of stress, all this that you think it's a very beautiful abdomen because it's a very hard abdomen, but actually it's a lot of energy blocked there. And that's the first structure of the brain. You know, in the quantum brain, you see that we speak of brain formations, memory and perception apparatus, starting with the belly area. So that's the first place when, speaking in vital energy terms, you can collapse the energy from the lower levels, you know, in the belly area. And then there is HeartMath Institute from California with so much research, which we continued about the heart. And then, of course, this one also. So we are not using very much all the brain's capacities. And then there's not so much research in science about, you know, the highest chakra and brain as well. But there is some experience, if anybody wants to research, Mario Beauregard, he did an experiment with nuns when they were in states of ecstasy. And so there is some evidence about kind of brain formation, brain meaning memory-making capacity and perception apparatus.
What were his experiments? Oh, by the way, I use the HeartMath device most mornings for heart-focused meditation and practice. So yeah, really support that. But this experiments with the nuns. So what were they detecting?
Mario Beauregard, yeah. So Mario Beauregard, they detected how when they were going in the state of ecstasy, the parietal lobe, you know, was kind of going off, you know. So you know that when we do fasting, for example, yeah. So all these places when you speak about brains, it's also teaching us that there is a software, yeah, and there's also a hardware. And all these areas, they need some, it's a doing and a being, you know? So if not, you're not feeding these levels of consciousness. You can think of all these bodies of consciousness, which is not just the physical body, all of them, and also the brains and the chakras. You need to learn how to nourish all these bodies of consciousness. Like, for example, in the belly area, what you do fasting sometimes, you know? There's so much research on fasting. So there's so much healing related to fasting also, because it's very important to not keep, you know.
So this nun's experience, there was a lot of activity in the parietal lobe. So, and with this type of practice, does the person doing the practice experience a sensation here? Is that what we would call this higher chakra?
Yeah. So
they're sensing the activity.
It's let me just go. So first, the navel area, you know, so you give it rest in this way. Now, in the heart area, how you give it a rest? You know, the immune system. You're not fighting all the time. You're allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and then you open for a higher function. Yeah. In the brain area, again, you meditate or you sleep. If you're not sleeping, it's not okay, obviously. And then here as well. So the parietal lobe, it just, so it just, like, how to say, like there were so many, the mode was very, very shifted, when they were entering the states. There were some specific nuns that they were experiencing the states of ecstasy related to Jesus.
Can I ask you to describe some of the subtle sensations that you've felt when you laid your hands on your parents when you were very young, but also some of these big quantum leaps that you've had? How would you describe those experiences through a felt self explanation?
So especially I have to say, like until I was 24 years of age, very interesting. Because at that moment I had a difficult experience, which kind of switched off a lot of this capacity. But until that time, so I had, I don't know. So I needed to touch somebody. So I just needed to touch a person, and I was just connected to my heart again. So naturally, again, from past lives for sure. But it was, for me, it was just through the touch, I could know that person, I could just look deeply into the soul of the person. And I could even feel that how the soul of the person is awakening. And many times I got so many intuitions, not with the head, it was just in my body, in my heart there. And it was like just so deep. And it was also like evoking God's grace, kind of, through my heart, through my hands for that person. But it was from past lives, And then many times again, I was keeping the palms, like let's say somebody had a problem somewhere, and I didn't have to. Nowadays, again, we are teaching people to do this rubbing of the palms, for example, to become aware of the tingles and expand. So this is a very easy way for people to start feeling the vital energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are exercises to
Like the
evoke.
qigong and the tai chi
Exactly. So there are
exercises.
ways how to train people to feel this. There are various exercises, even evoking cosmic energy when you're stretching up, let's say, and earth
Mm-hmm.
energy to the feet. So there are many ways to train. Now I was already trained from other lives. So when I was putting my hand or on anything, it was very interesting. It was sometimes I could. Unfortunately, I was also picking up some negative stuff and blockages, and then this was all the time my question: how to clean this up. Then later on, I learned more about how to do it. But otherwise, like I was just naturally evoking the divine grace through my palms. And I could see many times, like later on, I studied acupuncture and Chinese medicine. But those meridians that I studied later on, in that time, I was seeing them. I was seeing them through my with the eyes closed. I was just, it was beautiful and it was very, very powerful, the gift.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as I said, there was an experience, and then it's good because then there were other things that had to awaken, and still I can do these things periodically sometimes, but not all the time. And nowadays
Okay.
it's shifted towards something else, which is very okay. But at that time, like I remember, it was miraculous. It was miraculous things that were awakening like that. But again, in this way, for me, the path was through the heart. And also through the heart, I also manage other things. So for example, when I was 18 and I started to practice yoga, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it was this pose, cobra pose, if you know. So now
Yes. Yep.
in the yoga schools, it's more like a stretching or not. But there are some schools, where they teach you also how to pay attention to the flow of energy, you know,
Yeah.
how to kind of practice in a meditation style, a pose. And I was just loving it. So it's like at that time, okay, I was having my period and I was having such a long bleeding and painful and so on. And I didn't even know what happened, but after 3 months of practice, all this energy sublimated again through this pose so beautifully into the heart. And it remained like that. So all that heavy flow, you know, of the period.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just
So
something.
yeah, it's find interesting. I've done lots of yoga as well, and with luckily there was a yoga center near here that did lots of teacher training and very intense yoga for transformation, run by a lady called Sandra Hyder who does body psychotherapy. So I felt very lucky to have uh, been exposed to a lot of that, and I've witnessed other people having massive releases through yoga practice, and also through hands. I practice manual therapy. This is my treatment room, and have experienced myself and other people, freeing up blockages and what happens, how the body unravels, and things can flow again. So I also agree with you that science still doesn't completely explain our experience. We may be able to describe features of emotion, and propose theories of why we have an emotion. So, for example, allostasis, which is one of the popular ones at the moment, which says that maybe the body predicts what it's evolutionary advantageous for us to predict what is happening next and to prepare your body. So, if I'm going to prepare to eat, my stomach will rumble. If I'm going to prepare to run, the muscles will get ready. So maybe emotions are a part of that. However, you could argue that we could still do all those things and not feel them at all. We don't need to feel them if it would just happen instantaneously. So I don't think it still explains experience. So that's why I'm curious about this kind of quantum potentiality and the ability to choose, or at least to appear like we can choose. Some people would say that there is no such thing as free will. It's that it's too is an illusion. So why have you any thoughts about why we experience anything? Why don't these things just happen in the dark or completely reflexively?
It's like maybe God playing with himself, if you want to say, right?
Yes.
But you know what I noticed, because again, there is in the world, there are people who are, you are naturally attracted towards spirituality, or you're naturally extremely rational. So now rationality and understanding the processes is also very important, because I come from the other tradition. So even if I studied a lot, even if I'm speaking many languages, even whatever. So whatever I did was more like intuitive. But then when quantum science and this knowledge came through, this is worth to put your mind into, because as an intuitive person and more heart-oriented, maybe you are also like that, but it takes it's something happens, so it's a polarity. It's something that awakens and makes sense. So it's helping you integrate all this dichotomy. Again, all this, it's like even in the field, in the medicine field. Yeah, so I studied both allopathy and traditional medicines. So all of them, they consider the other one superior or inferior, and so it's like that. And the same in the spiritual field. Spiritual people, they are thinking, oh, I'm so superior. Eventually you get to spiritual ego. Also, or the other ones, so if you have a more rational tendency, and you are able to, to have a self-control already. So that means that you have already some developing of Manipura chakra, the belly area, and Ajna chakra, the head area, which is actually very, very good. But the thing, like with the rationality, you don't get to expand your consciousness, that's clear. But also we need all these poles of experiences. There's no doubt, because we need to learn, like even if you're thinking of the practices, how to train yourself. There's so much research on meditation, concentration, and so on, so much research already on the pre-conscious and why to get to that. And also on the supermental experiences eventually, but so again, it's nothing, it's again, it's still part of the process, so we need to have both, otherwise we keep ourselves limited. We may have all kind of ideas about ourselves, but the moment you integrate both, I think you become humble and simple, and then what can we know? How much can we really know in this life? It's like a grain of sand. Even if you start having all these beautiful experiences, or even an experience of connecting with the self, which can take a few seconds, but it's giving you the inspiration that you need to continue the journey until the end, So, but again, both things have to be integrated. I'm telling you from experience, because I was so resistant to learn about these terms. Oh my God. But good that I had Amit as a teacher, and also as a continuous inspiration, because I see him. And again, I was very, a lot of grace. I met quite some amazing people in my life. But again, it's so interesting. Like when you meet a person who is able to live in the supramental level, that is a person that becomes very simple, and humble and inspires and deep, and patience. I had to learn so much patience, and I still have to. Oh my God.
So the supramental, for people listening to this, super meaning above and mental. So is my understanding of the supermental, it's that part of us that observes and witnesses the rest of experience. So it might be supermental can noticing other subtle energies like the physical or the mental or the vital energies. Is that correct?
Yeah, but there is more to explain if you want, because we have these four worlds of experience. We have the physical sensing, we have the vital feeling, we call it. We have the mental thinking and supramental intuiting. Yeah, so it's
intuiting. Okay.
One of those organ functions for which we need to wake up also the chakras, And again, we have to get to the science of the chakras. It's really a science there. And it's important to understand it, because even if in terms of just health, So it's a lot of things to understand there, but also in terms of psychology, like because for example, normally what you feel at the heart chakra is defensiveness or vulnerability, yeah? Or when you wake up the heart chakra, the heart awakens to the function of love, which is an intuitive archetype, So supramental intuitions and archetypes, they go together. Or also, if you want, in terms of, you heard maybe about Aurobindo, you heard?
Sri Aurobindo.
Exactly. So the term was created by him, and it means above the mind. So it's that awareness that remains even after our mind stops. It's of course part of our consciousness, but it's again above the mental realm, above our common intellect, or above what we are used to understand and communicate. But it's also the melting of the mind and heart in the process of superior understanding. So it's you think of, like, if we function only at the mind level, we can say that we are asleep, and prisoners of the thoughts. You see all these thoughts, ruminating cows, right, in our heads. So many times we can surprise ourselves and just looking at what these thoughts are, especially when you're in a traumatic mode, But if there are flashes of intuitions, that in those moments we are not limited to the mind only, yeah. So these moments of inspiration and intuition, they are from the supramental, which is again is not something which is very far away, but we need to learn to pay attention. I love very much Eckhart Tolle also. Book, The Power of Now.
Power of Now.
Mental, exactly. So also when we like something very much, so maybe you read a book, nowadays people don't read so much, but maybe how it is to read a book so fascinated that you just don't hear anything happening around. So that's also a supramental experience, when you like something extremely, you're totally there.
Immersed.
Then there are, in the spiritual traditions, there are two names for the supramental: soul and also heart, kind of spiritual heart as a gate to the supramental. Like if there's also a book which I would recommend. It's called Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. It's a treaty which has to be read, not just with the mind, So, which talks.
Can you send a link to that and I'll add it to the notes for this video?
I'll text. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, and then if you want the supramental, there are practices in that book that help you to trigger, to prepare, because it's everything just a preparation. We cannot force a quantum leap. We cannot force a supramental experience, but it feels also like a state of void when you're in the supramental, but you're not just sitting, only the entrance is this kind of state of void, it's like you shift the speeds in the car, you just pass through a neutral zone, and then it's supramental activity, thoughts with the heart, if you want. Yeah. And there's also a superior emotional energy associated with them, and then that's the level if you want to communicate with other spiritual guides or beings and so on. Or it's even called experience with knowledge. Because if you have just the knowledge, it's just dry, it's not transforming, it's just information, right? And if you have just the experience, like how many people develop spiritually do, but without the knowledge, it still remains foggy and you cannot maintain it,
Do you have any tips for discerning between a flash of insight and intuition and maybe some other kind of, let's say I drink too much coffee and I have all these racing ideas and it feels like inspiration and insight, but then it may not turn out to be, other than avoiding coffee? What would you suggest to be able to help to distinguish between useful inspiration or some kind of other unhelpful but it feels intensely positive thought?
Well, again, if it's a state of inspiration that comes with the expansion of consciousness, and then it's kind of, it's really, because in the, what we call creative process, there are some things that you are doing, for example, even using the supramental imagination, which is not about things that don't exist, but it's about things that exist, but you don't see them with the naked eye, like, for example, the meridians, or doing evoking archetypes, or the presence of your guardian angel. So there are some things that you can do and use your mind for that reason. Mind has to be strong. It's good. It's like, um, it's it's very important to have a very strong mind, but in the same time, you have to work with this negativity that is there and balance with the positive. So you have to bring up the positive and also to connect with the feelings in the body. So if it's just a thought and you don't feel it anywhere, it's like, the gut feeling, for example. There's a feeling in the gut many times, or it can be in the heart, or it's a difference between inspiration and insight also.
Mm-hmm.
Light is like thunder strikes you when you feel that somebody is really pulling a very strong veil of fog from your eyes, and you're facing this archetype of truth. Then nobody can fool you. So these experiences can come with such a strong impact that you cannot be fooled anymore. So also when you have a supermental experience, you have an encounter with the truth there. So, but for that, we have to prepare. We have to see what are the blockages, what are our qualities, and charge up, kind of ask yourself what is the meaning of your life, if you didn't yet. Many times again, people get to Alzheimer nowadays, even I don't know, in the 30s. There are experiences, yeah, because it's so much lack of meaning and purpose. Run around and now the artificial intelligence, which
Yes.
and I mean, we don't even develop our own intelligence. A phone is more intelligent than us many times,
Yeah,
And
offloading it. I mean, there is the argument that it will free us up to be more creative, but I'm not sure whether that's going to happen. So there's a recurring themes here, or ways of looking at it. So kind of creating some balance between things that appear opposite, polar and opposite. Then there's this balance between contraction and expansion, and then the cycle, the hero's journey. So, which is actually maybe a spiral more than a circle, as you sort of saying it's linked to evolution. I'm aware we're coming up to that hour. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything to share about the work that you're that's coming up for you? You said there's a book that's about to be published, and where can people find more about your work, please?
you can find me on Instagram if you want, Valentina Onisor, my name. And we are working on many things. Yeah, as I mentioned, my favorite thing is about the spiritual heart, and actually the spiritual fraternity. That I'm hoping that we will all be able to live in, because so there are these delicate times nowadays. There's even the question if we are still in Kali Yuga, in this Yuga, because obviously, you see what's happening in this year. So all the things are coming up, yeah. But the beauty of it is that in the middle of crisis, you can choose. You can decide to choose for yourself. You can go to heal. Also, I can feel that the things are very much accelerated. Yeah. Now, if you ask me about my now our preoccupation nowadays, it's also about gerontology. Because
Gerontology.
yeah, because after 40s, you have so many roses, arthrosis, sclerosis, nevrosis, osteoporosis, So I like very much, I mean, we, preventive medicine, but also now we are checking a lot into quantum gerontology, regeneration, even. There are a lot of theory about this, but there are so many practices, and in quantum yoga that we didn't speak about much. It's the overall experiential goal is the ability to live and act from expanded, inclusive states of consciousness. So, and then it's really, really, really a lot of applications, because the physiology can change. That's what we discovered. Physiology can change through through the proper practices and proper understanding, and evoking this power that we all have there, but we keep it late. It's like we are afraid of our powers,
And what will be the title of your new book?
The Awakening of Higher Intelligence.
Awakening of Higher Intelligence. Thank you so much, Dr. Valentina, and I'll put links to all those things you've mentioned, including your Instagram, in the notes for this. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and it passed like 1 minute. I'm so happy to be with you.